Hello, hello. Where we left off last week. Let me think. Right. Akasaka was trying to find a phone to call his wife at the hospital at the last possible second. All these phone cords just so happened to be cut so that he couldn't make a phone call. Ah, why is my nose starting to get stuffy? The person who was running around cutting all the phone cords was you, wasn't it, Rika-chan? You shouldn't do that anymore. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Really? She tried to play dumb, but it was written all over her face. Nipa! It was obvious she was trying to laugh it off, but that adorable smile of hers just made me want to forgive her. Ah, I'm going to be a horrible father, aren't I? That momentary lapse in tension was erased by her next words. It's good that they found the grandson safe and sound. Unable to respond right away, I sunk into silence. I had already learned this from Sato-san's info, didn't I? This girl, no, this entire village, knew everything since the moment I set foot in it. I considered playing dumb, but in the end, I chose not to. With everything being known already, there was no point in me feigning ignorance. Somehow. That's great. Now you can go back to Tokyo. Thank you. Are your injuries bad, Akasaka? Why is there a random quote at the end of that? Don't know. I haven't heard anything from the doctor yet, so I don't know if they are or not. Huh? Come to think of it, I vaguely remembered being told to lie down and take it easy for at least 24 hours. Did that mean bed rest? The wounded shouldn't be sneaking out of the hospital. People shouldn't be cutting phone cords. Me. I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about either. As we played dumb with each other, we both laughed at the same time. If somebody saw us laughing at each other like this, it would probably bring a smile to their lips. The chances of Akasaka leaving this village alive weren't very high. I don't want Akasaka to die, so I'm glad you're leaving the village alive. Rika-chan, did you know why I was right from the beginning? She said nothing, but gave a firm nod. Well then, I think you know this, but we're probably somewhat of an enemy to the people in this village, I would think. But you still gave me lots of warnings. That's right. She said it at that time. She wouldn't warn somebody that she was okay with dying. She definitely said something like that. Then, I should probably be thanking you. You probably should. I'm your saver. Saying that, she puffed up her chest proudly. She said it jokingly, but the meaning behind those words was quite heavy. That was because whether I lived or died was a decision that might have been made in a place unbeknownst to me. She said those words with such an adorable smile that it took a few moments of silence for their weight to settle in. I'd been to this place before. The Defense Alliance's office was there. It was the stone steps leading up to the Furude Shrine. When I passed by before, I was so focused on finding a phone booth, I hadn't realized where I was. If I recall correctly, this shrine is Rika-chan's house, right? Yeah, something like that. Looking up at the shrine grounds, it was brightly lit and energetic voices could be heard. What was going on? There's a festival today. A festival? The best and only festival in Hinamizawa. The Watanagashi Festival. Watanagashi? Cotton drifting? Just knowing the name is boring. Do you want to take a look? She asked bluntly. But seeing that I looked interested, she climbed up a couple of steps and motioned for me to come. I was only going to go back and sleep anyways. If I had nothing else to do, it might not be a bad idea to go with her on a little detour. In the hostile territory that was this village, I didn't know what would happen if I ventured down a side road without Oishi. Even though I thought of the village like that, when I was with this girl, I forgot all about it. In any case, even without anything to back it up, I felt that as long as I was with her, none of the ill will from the village would befall me. That's why, even though I knew my cover was blown, I strangely had no qualms about setting foot into the heart of the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance's territory. Climbing up to the grounds of the shrine, I could see there were about 3 pavilions set up, with meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks from the village, no, the executives of the Defense Alliance, were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I could only see it as people from the village council drinking while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quite different than any festival I've ever seen. See? It's quite a boring festival, isn't it? It certainly doesn't look like a festival. It's a festival that's happened since long ago, but as you can see, it's not like it used to be. As if to chide the old folk, she said that while looking at them with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It was just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival. I feel sorry for the deity being celebrated here. Give this sorry excuse for a festival 5 or 6 more years, then everybody in the village will start coming. The ceremony will also be done properly, and it'll be a respectable festival again. What she said was not so much wishful thinking, as it was the telling of a future that had already been determined. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost like she was simply reporting the results. That's how it sounded. Even though it was baseless speculation, the way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. While I shrugged to find the words to reply to her, she wandered over to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in a state where I could afford to be left behind, I hurriedly followed after her. Passing through a copse of pine trees, a strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. Every once in a while I have to question, is this a word I don't know? Or is it something misspelled? There, from that one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had shown me. As it had grown completely dark, the modest lights littered across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery. Looking at it like this village seems tranquil. She said that with an indifferent look on her face. Just the other day, you said that this village definitely wouldn't be submerged by the dam, didn't you? She didn't reply, seemingly relishing in the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair. Didn't that mean, at that point in time, the minister had already complied with the demands? She spun around, her gaze meeting mine. But she said nothing. She spoke nothing that would neither confirm nor deny what I had just said. This case would probably remain shrouded in darkness. Shredded by the darkness. Headquarters probably doesn't want trouble from a scandal with the minister breaking out. There's no mistake that they threatened to kill the grandchild. Then, negotiations with the minister were successful, and the grandson was released. The one who saved the grandson was you. I wonder about that. The discovery of that wallet that started this chain of events. That alone was almost too convenient, I think. Ever since the moment that wallet was discovered, I'd felt something was odd. Luigi said it as well, that the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage, meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, I was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me. I felt like they put up quite a fight, but that may have been all part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they couldn't just say, "Here you go," and return the minister's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew that public safety had realized that this was a kidnapping case, and were moving in on it. That's why, due to the actions of public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely. So the minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary. I don't know about these difficult things. Likewise, even for me I can't make much sense of it. But there's one thing I can be certain of. It's just as you said, this village won't be submerged. The dam project will soon be over. That wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying, but I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. This village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but that was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves I had to leave the house I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I just happened to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived for generations. It might be ignorant to call their desperate resistance an overreaction. I might not really be qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind. Still, aren't you glad? Why would that be? At the very least, with this, peace will return to this village. Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take more than a few months before it would be completely scrapped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 or 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that their village wasn't going to be submerged at the bottom of a dam was still a ways away. But it was no mistake that the promise of peace returning to the village was there. It turned out, from beginning to end, that it had already been decided. Just as the girl had said, it was decided. There wasn't really a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravate an unpleasant situation. If I had never come here then, the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable manner. Peace? In this village? Why, I nodded. She laughed as if to admonish me, but her face remained indifferent, expressionless. And then her eyes narrowed slightly, as she snickered. Even though every year from now on, something bloody will occur? Riki-chan, what are you talking about? As the wind blew her hair about, the girl, as if taking pleasure in that I was the only one who didn't know, continued to snicker as she looked at my face for a while. You see, in a few years, I'll be killed. Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if her expression that had been cast in shadow was smiling, amused, or resigned. You are? Why? It's a very unpleasant thing, though. It's also probably been decided already. Decided already? Who would decide that sort of thing? I'd like to know that as well. Turning back to face me, she showed a resolute expression for the first time. And after staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words. There's a lot of people who have no regard for human life. Even if I tell you this, it might not change anything, though. But if you want to erase the specter of death, sometimes, like with the reflection of the moon on the water, all you have to do is throw a small stone. I had no idea what she was trying to say. It's just, I had to listen to every word with my body and soul. Or at least, that's what I thought. This day next year. Yes, June 1979, on this day. The foreman of the dam construction project will be killed. What? For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. By the foreman, did she mean that gruff old man I played mahjong with? But, be killed? What makes you think? She didn't answer, but she had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared that the dam project would go away. That wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that was already decided. No. It was as if she was already reporting the results. That sort of expression. After being killed in a gruesome manner, the body will be torn apart and disposed of. Murdered and dismembered? The next year, in 1980, on this day, Satoko's parents will be pushed to their death. Satoko? It was the first time I heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's story. It might be an accident. An unfortunate accident. The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with a lifeless look in her eyes. And then, the year after that, this day in June of 1981, my parents will be killed. And then, the year after that, this day in June of 1982, Satoko's abusive aunt will have her head split open and die. Then, the year after that, this day in the June of 1983, or possibly a few days afterwards. I will be killed. If all the deaths are preordained, then the last one would also be all according to plan. But then, whose plan would it be? This village is full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths up to 1982 would be the work of somebody in the village. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths that would occur were at the discretion of those who control the village. But that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. There was no way that the last death would fit in with anybody's plans. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals. But their goals were at odds with the last death. That's why the last death was unrelated to them. But that last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. Probably, definitely, I dare say. The last death would be a merciful one. A handkerchief or something being placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that? I want to live happily. That's my only wish. Surrounded by my precious friends, spending our days enjoyably. Only that. I don't wish for anything more than that. Rika-chan, I don't want to die. The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in the end. Eventually, we were discovered by some drunks. The girl, as well as I, were dragged back to the festivities. Everybody was completely drunk, so even when they saw my head completely wrapped in bandages, they wouldn't let me leave. Well, certainly, if I was in good enough condition to slip out of the hospital. It must not be that serious. The girl was mingling with everybody, being pampered like a kitten. Her expression was adorable, nothing like the one from just before, predicting her own death, and whispering that she didn't want to die. Having said that, having a silly and lively conversation like this, it was hard to believe that these people were the core of an extremist resistance group. Even if it was a shell of its former self, it was a festival where people in the village gathered, so the 20-some-odd folk should have included some of the village executives and other important members. Among those, there was no doubt that there were members that were at the Sonozaki Family Council in attendance. Meaning, even if we never met face-to-face before, there were people here who knew my identity. In a small village like this, they knew the faces of all the villagers that lived here. That's why, without even saying anything, it soon became obvious I was an outsider. But they actually seemed interested by that, asking me all sorts of questions about Tokyo, drinking while musing on the faint relationship the city had with the villagers, and empathizing with the rather meager environment. The confidential talks with the minister were finished. His grandson was in police custody. Everything was over. I might not have to be put in another perilous situation. To me, they were only my adversaries because of my job. Outside of that, there was no reason I couldn't be friendly with them. The next time I visited this village, would it return to being a tranquil and beautiful place? If that happened, I might be able to take a relaxed walk around the village with her again. My cup was once again filled to the brim with beer. By the time I was able to get away, it was the middle of the night. The girl had at some point disappeared. It seems that her parents had told her to go home and sleep when she let out a large yawn. The old folks, who had absolutely no remorse for making an injured person hang out with them, told me as much as they laughed. I was just there drinking, so I had thought to help a bit with cleanup. However, my help was refused on the grounds that I was a guest. On top of that, they had a car prepared to take me back to the hospital. Losing the battle against my sleepiness inside the car, I was sound asleep until we reached the parking lot of the hospital. The front door of the hospital was naturally locked at this hour. I wandered around bewilderedly, searching for a back entrance, until somebody on night duty found and let me inside. Where were you this late at night? Dr. Erie was worried, you know. Sorry for the trouble. I was held up by the people having a festival at the shrine. Oh, they did say something about everybody in the town council getting together for a drink. My condolences. Are your wounds alright? They're throbbing a bit. It's probably because of all the alcohol, I think. Oh, that's right. The detective that was with you wanted to get in touch. Oops. I kept Oishi-san waiting. I glanced at the clock. No matter how you looked at it, it was way too late to call him now. I'll apologize to him tomorrow over the phone. I returned back to my hospital room and slipped into the bed that was still unmade from the time I went outside. Oh, that's not good. I have to turn off the lights. But my weariness had cut the cord powering my body, lulling me into a deep sleep. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. 3 Mother's Diary. Alright, starting from the get-go with that then. There was something I didn't like about my child. I first realized it when I started writing these things down. They never warn you about it in any books about raising children, but they aren't just a plaything. If they aren't able to feel loved even when they're not doing exactly as their parents want them to, then those parents are failures. This wasn't something like that, though. How can I say it? It's probably harder to express with mere words. I just want my child to be average. As long as they weren't falling behind, there wasn't any need for them to excel at something. As long as they acted appropriately for their age, I would have been fine with it. My child had been different ever since kindergarten. While the children in her class were running around in excitement about the field trip the next day, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the other kids broke the equipment for the athletics festival and were apologizing fervently, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the teacher was reading a fun picture book, only she wasn't smiling. Even if they all got to eat a delicious bento, only she wasn't happy. If it was only this, it would still be in the realm of understanding. However, what I don't understand about my child is that if the aforementioned situations happened again, they now act in a manner befitting their age. I don't understand the principle behind that, as a parent. Why were they indifferent about that field trip, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that picture, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that bento, but happy about this one? The former and the latter in each situation seemed exactly the same to me. There was even times when I thought the former one was better. I don't understand that child's feelings. During parent-teacher meetings, the teacher always says the same thing, and I would always respond that I don't understand my own child, and we would mope together. My husband, always the optimist, once said that a young child's feelings are different from an adult's, so if there were some things we didn't understand, we shouldn't worry about it. I lament his lack of urgency. One day when I was in a good mood, I took the effort to prepare a menu that my child would enjoy, but she only smiled with a vague expression of disinterest. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. On a day when the weather was nice, the laundry I had just hung up to dry was blown by a large gust of wind, causing the entire line to fall down. But she, watching me trying to pick up the laundry in panic, stood there laughing. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. I think the same sort of thing happened countless times. Before I knew it, my child was only able to look at me with an indifferent expression on her face. I regret the fact that I've been a bad mother. Thinking I should regain her trust, I thought to get it back little by little with some light interactions. Seeing her do some sort of craft work on the veranda, I called out to her. These past few days have been nice and sunny. The air feels nice, doesn't it? That child with that indifferent look on her face I hated so much looked up at me for a moment, then without a word returned to immersing herself in her craft work. Up until now, I would have hit her on the head just for that. I held myself back. What are you making? Is it a doll? A weather charm. That child was using inserts from the newspaper to deftly make some weather charms. The forecast hadn't called for rain, but that child, in her own way, was praying that these sunny days would continue. Being able to understand my own child for the first time in a while, I couldn't hide my own happiness. Bringing out a ball of yarn, I began to hang my child's cute weather charms from the eaves of the house. It's no good, Rika. The heads are too heavy, see? They become reverse weather charms now. If they're like this, they'll call the rain instead of the sun. When I started to take them down, my child tugged at the hem of my shirt as if to stop me. That's because I made them to be upside down. They're fine. But, Rika, if they're upside down, there won't be a charm that calls for a sunny day, you know? I was making a charm for it to rain, so they're fine. I desperately suppressed the emotions welling up inside me. I was trying desperately to understand my child. Oh, I see. The morning glories in the garden were starting to get a little wilted from all the sun, so you wanted some rain, right? That child turned to me with the expression that I hated the most. I got bored with the clear weather. I don't understand. I don't understand. I just can't understand that child. I mean, I just like the rain, so. Mother's Diary Part 2. During the family council, she buried herself under Oreo-san's futon again. Oreo-san dotes on her unwaveringly. No matter whatever insolence my child commits, she doesn't mind. It's almost as though my child is a kitten or something. Oreo dotes on her exactly like you would with a kitten. As her mother, I chided her for doing that. Until Oreo-san had said 3 times that it was fine, I chided her as a formality. Of course, she never lends an ear to any of my chidings. Knowing that Oreo-san's standing was far above mine, she behaves like that. I don't like the cunning that's unbefitting of her age, either. In any case, not only Oreo-san, but the rest of the old folk in the village spoil her too much. One day, I was surprised. By chance, on the way back from some shopping, I saw her by herself just outside a candy shop. My own child suddenly grabbed a snack, opened the package right there and then, and started eating it. She didn't make any attempt to pay for it, and she didn't even think of looking around. It didn't even feel like she was shoplifting, more like she was brazenly eating snacks that was offered to her. When I began to admonish my child, the elderly shop owner appeared and covered for her. The owner gave the ridiculous excuse that he had said it was okay for that child to eat any of the snacks out by the entrance, so it was fine. When I tried to pay for the snacks that my child had eaten, the owner refused my money. During that exchange, more old folks had suddenly gathered around, and began to feel like I was the one in the wrong. The elderly people all put their hands together reverently in front of my child, and repeatedly voiced their respects. I was born into the Furude family, so it wasn't like I didn't know why she was being treated specially. When I was still young, it was something I heard often from my grandmother. If by chance the child that I gave birth to was a girl, that child would be the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. All the older folk believe she's the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, and spoil her rotten. Not only did they spoil her, but they even told her she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, that she had a divine power, and threw all sorts of strange folk tales her way. So she may have begun to believe herself that she was a special existence. I went around and told everybody that it wasn't good for her upbringing, so to tell her all these strange things. But there was no unrooting the elderly people's deep-seated superstitions. I told my child not to listen to them, but it ended up being that she stopped listening to me. Between all the old folks in the village who would dote on her, and myself who only scolded her, there was no wonder who she would listen to. There was no mistaking that the reason she had become strange was because of the elderly villagers. There was no doubt that they had shoved her full of strange folk tales and superstitions since she was young. If it wasn't for that, there was no doubt my child would have been cute and normal. Dang school's teaching my kids stuff I don't want. One sunny parent-teacher day, there was a cooking class, and my child was making curry rice with a practiced hand. While the other children her age were awkwardly using their kitchen knives, that child was wielding hers deftly. The teacher approached me with a smile on their face, saying it must be a result of learning it at home. I managed to play it off with a vague smile and a nod in response. That was because I had never once taught my child how to make curry rice. Even then, she was peeling vegetables with a practiced hand, adding them into the pot in the order of which took longer to cook. For a normal parent, they might unintentionally clap their hands together, happy at their child's actions. But in my case, it was different. There was no mistaking that somebody had taught her how to make that curry rice while I wasn't taking care of her. Thinking that, I quietly fell into an unpleasant mood. When I asked, it seemed she could also sew and do the laundry. I had never taught her how to do those, and again, never saw her do it around the house. Be it cooking or sewing or the laundry. Again, that was probably because the elderly villagers taught her all sorts of rubbish while I wasn't looking. Not only that, they probably taught her all sorts of strange superstitions, trying to prop her up as the living incarnation of Oyashi's. I said as much to my husband, suggesting that we should keep our child away from the elderly folk. But my husband, who was in the position of being the head priest of the shrine, had little power against the elderly who supported it. He took the rather uncommitted stance of saying that as long as she was being doted upon, wasn't it fine? I argued against that. That she was our child, and should be a completely normal girl. That what the elderly were expecting, that she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, was simply odd. The elderly villagers believed that child had divine powers. We would discuss the weather for the following day, but there were many times when I left the house without an umbrella and came back soaking wet. Rather than having clairvoyance, that was just secondhand knowledge from her watching the news all the time. The things that she knew that she shouldn't have known were just a result of the people who were trying to indoctrinate her, and the people who were gossiping getting together in the village. However, there certainly were days when everybody thought it was going to be sunny all day, and that child would stubbornly not go out without an umbrella. It would occasionally rain, and in the end we would be saved. There might also have been times where Rika knew of major accidents in foreign countries faster than the news did. I thought that she must have heard it break over the radio or something. Knowing things she shouldn't have, something like that, was in front of me right now, wasn't it? That child was making curry rice when there shouldn't have been anybody who taught her how to. No, that couldn't possibly be the case. Somebody had taught her, indoctrinated her. While I wasn't taking care of her, somebody had indoctrinated Rika with something. Furuta-san's curry is absolutely splendid. I'll give it a gold star. Where did you learn to cook, Furuta-san? At home? Yes, at home. The other parents in attendance were impressed. Lies. All lies. I didn't teach her anything. Who was it? Who was it? Who was the person who had completely indoctrinated my child? She was my normal, average daughter, not the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. Alright, now we start the final chapter. Midsummer 1985? That's after the, after her death. Sir, we're preparing to land. Excuse me, but will you please fasten your seatbelt? It seemed I had fallen fast asleep inside the plane. I was finally awoken from my slumber by the stewardess. I only had carry-on luggage on top of it being a domestic flight, so the time between disembarking and entering the lobby was almost non-existent. Arriving at the lobby, I glanced around, looking for Oishi, and was met with a familiar, gruff voice calling out to me. Akasaka-san! How many years has it been? It's been a while, hasn't it? Oishi-san! Really has been a long time. Oishi clapped his hand down on my shoulder, celebrating our reunion. Akasaka-san, you're looking pretty good. You look like a bona fide frontline investigator now. You're looking quite dapper yourself. Your posture seems a lot better. Is the ballroom dancing paying off? You should give it a try while you're still young. You'd be a hit with the ladies. A real babe magnet. Oishi had retired and moved to Sapporo, and of all things, had started taking ballroom dancing lessons. He had apparently gotten really into it, and had decided to spend the rest of his new life devoted to that hobby. He was aiming to get his instructor's qualifications before he hit 80, and live out his old age dandily. I let myself into Oishi's car, and we headed out towards the hot spring inn. I had originally intended to crash at Oishi's place, but Oishi was quite obstinate that his home wasn't suitable for that, so it came to this. At the inn, we relaxed while soaking in the hot springs, reminiscing about the time we played mahjong together in Unizawa. It seemed that to celebrate our reunion, Oishi had looked for people who could play, but unable to find a suitable candidate, we had to give up on putting together a table. As we drank together, we excitedly recounted our exploits during the final manhunt. Did they end up catching those two guys? Nope. In the end, the search team never found them. They were probably hidden by the villagers, then sent overseas or somewhere else far away to lay low for a bit. It's a nice yukata. Oishi-san, if I remember correctly, you managed to grab one of their guns, didn't you? Did you learn anything from that? It was a Chinese-made military pistol. Probably from the ones that gangs in Kansai managed to smuggle in a ton of. We tried to get a match from the rifling, but it didn't show up in any other cases. How about on your end? After that, I was removed from the front lines, so I don't know much. In the end, it seems like everything was settled under the veil of secrecy. No, Oishi smiled wryly as he sipped his chilled drink. What happened after that? Sure was tough, huh? This will be 7 years now? Yeah. We held the memorial service a few days ago. I've become estranged with my father-in-law lately, so it was rough getting everything ready. No, that must have been a lot of work. It was then that the hostess brought in the extra drinks that we had ordered before. While the bottles of beer clanked as she brought them in, we halted our conversation. What Oishi meant when he said it must have been tough. Thinking about that was still hard, but time had healed the wound. It was the day after, when I phoned Oishi to apologize. When I did, Oishi almost immediately handed the phone to one of my colleagues, who happened to be there. Not only was I injured in the brawl with the suspects, but I had disappeared to drink late into the night without leaving any sort of contact information. So I thought he'd definitely be mad. However, all he said was that it was something he couldn't talk about over the phone, and I should come to the station as soon as possible. At the time, I could only think that he must have been really pissed off. Off he goes to the station. But when I arrived at the station, he said this. It seems your wife was involved in an accident. Having no idea what happened, I borrowed the phone to contact the hospital Yukie was staying at. After being given the runaround several times, I was finally able to talk to someone in charge, and after mincing words for quite some time, they told me Yukie Akasaka was killed in an accident. The world became a blur as I sat there dumbfounded. Yukie's death was unbelievably abrupt, unbelievably sudden. I could have understood if there was some kind of problem during the birth, but Yukie's death wasn't anything like that. On the stairs on the way up to the roof, she just happened to slip and fall. And she just happened to fall on an unfortunate place at an unfortunate angle. That was it. Wanting to blame Yukie's death on somebody, I began to think that it was an act of revenge by the Defense Alliance, that they killed my wife and made it look like an accident. What I learned when I flew back to Tokyo, however, was much more cruel than that. Yukie had a habit of going up to the roof to cool off in the evening. There was an elevator up to the 7th floor, but from there you had to take the stairs to get to the roof. Even late in her pregnancy, when the evening came, she would always head up there. Her father had always said for her to not push herself, but Yukie insisted that until the time she had no choice but to stay in bed, she should be allowed to do as she wished. However, I had never once seen Yukie go up to the roof. I only heard that from her father and the nurses. That was because whenever I visited her, she would spend that time with me instead. I heard the reason Yukie went up to the roof from a nurse she had become friendly with. She had said that her husband was away on business a lot of the time, and that whenever he called, she was able to cheer him up and give him courage. But when he didn't call, she couldn't do that. Her husband might put on a show of bravado, but in reality, he grew lonesome pathetically fast. She was probably just the same. Whenever he left for business, not clear when he'd be back, she felt very lonely. Whenever she cheered him up, she was actually cheering herself up as well. That's why, whenever he went far away for an important job, on the evenings he didn't call, at the very least, she felt that standing underneath the same sky, her feelings would reach him. At that moment, I remembered the words that the girl had told me, that it was best I go back to Tokyo right away. Otherwise, there would be something I'd regret horribly. Yes, that's it. Because I was away on business that day, Yukie headed up to the roof. Had I known that this would have been the result, had I done as the girl had said and dropped everything to head back to Tokyo, I might have been with Yukie on the day she died. If I was with her, she wouldn't have gone up to the roof. The day my wife died was on the evening of the third day of my trip. Yes, it was right before the time I had the sudden urge to hear Yukie's voice, and ran around the village trying to find a phone. The girl had gone around and cut all the phone cords. If she hadn't, I had made that call, I would have undoubtedly learned of Yukie's death at that time, collapsed in tears. Of course, even though the cords were cut, it had only put me off learning of Yukie's death by that one evening. In the end, I had learned of it the next morning. However, when I managed to put my emotions in order, I realized it was that girl's small token of consideration. That's the first I've heard about that. Yeah, it's the first time I've talked about it. Could it have been a coincidence? She doesn't have any special powers or anything. Aren't you the one who told me, Oishi-san? That she might be the reincarnation of the god called Oyashiro-san. Well, yeah. The old folks in the village believed that Rika Furude had divine powers. Divine powers? Oishi had originally said it as a kind of joke, but realizing that I was serious, he slumped his shoulders. I don't know if it's the truth or not. They said she did things like prophesize the future, or talk about things she should have no way of knowing. That she was clairvoyant, that it was divine revelation. Well, also all sorts of things. Of course, they couldn't give it specific examples, though. No. She prophesied Yukie's accident. Oishi tried to laugh it off, but out of respect to my deceased wife, he kept it restrained. Does that mean an active and capable investigator from the Metropolitan Police Department believes in divine powers and curses? Having him say that so bluntly, I couldn't respond. Of course, I had no intention of believing such odd things. But he could only say that because he didn't know what I did. Since I met that other girl, who both was and wasn't Rika Furude, I couldn't deny the existence of any otherworldly entity. Of course, I can't deny that it might not have been precedence, but rather a warning. Not precedence, but a warning. If what that girl had said was a warning about Yukie's accident, then things became much easier to understand. Basically, the line of thinking became that it was a threat. Because I didn't go back to Tokyo, my wife was killed in a way that made it look like an accident. Not satisfied with the investigation into your wife's accident? Of course, I suspected foul play. I pored over the results and even carried out my own personal investigation. There weren't any witnesses to Yukie's fall. There was the possibility that somebody had hidden, waiting to push Yukie down the stairs. However, the cleaning ladies frequented the roof to hang laundry, and the security cameras on each floor hadn't recorded anything out of it. There wasn't anything set up on the stairs, and I wasn't able to find anything suspicious. It was the cleaning ladies. In the end, even after my personal investigation, I can't think that anything else happened, other than a simple accident. Well, of course, these were the guys that took the minister's grandson hostage. It wouldn't be impossible for them to push a lone pregnant woman down the stairs without leaving any evidence. Oishi's expression had completely sobered up. They murdered your wife? When Yukie died, I thought that as well. More precisely, I wanted to blame somebody, so I created the most viable scapegoat. but without any clear evidence, that violent notion faded along with the wounds in my heart. Did that girl know beforehand about my wife's death, was threatening me? Or did she prophesize that death, and was offering me a road to salvation? If I had to choose between the two, I would tend towards the latter. Oishi smiled slightly in disbelief as he poured more beer from his bottle. Now, if I may, if what you say is true, then Rika Furude was a prophet who knew the future. If so, why didn't she predict that disaster? If she knew that the gas eruption was going to happen, why did she remain silent? Even a few hours beforehand would have been enough. If the village knew, then most of the people would have escaped without dying. Great Hinamizoa disaster. It was near the end of June 1983. Volcanic gases from the Onigufuchi swamp erupted and hit the village in the middle of the night. It was an unprecedented disaster, and the whole populace was wiped out. It caused a wave of panic about volcanic gas across the country, causing people to overreact over any reports of odd smells. I hadn't heard of the blockade on the Hinamizoa area being lifted, so it should still be cordoned off. That's... It was my turn to be lost for a response. Well, if Rika Furude, the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama, was killed, then the village might have incurred God's wrath, making him call forth the miasma from the swamp to kill everyone. That explanation is what the survivors are whispering about. Sorry, Oishi-san. Did you just say she was killed? Huh? Ah, yeah. Well, I don't think it would be a problem if I told you. When I saw the news about the gas disaster, I remembered that girl. I then found her name in the list of victims. That's why, at the time, I thought her own death she had predicted was due to the gas. It was after that I learned from the tabloids of the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizoa during the 5 years leading up to the disaster that became known as the Curse of Oyashiro-sama. And that string of mysterious deaths lined up exactly with what that girl had predicted, so I had always thought to ask Oishi about it, as he had been involved in the investigation. That's right. That was the reason for our reunion. Right now, Oishi had said, Rika Furude didn't die in the disaster, but was killed? Can I ask you about the last year of the curse? I may be retired, but I still have to keep things confidential, you know? Excuse me, madam? Do you have anything cold that's brewed locally? High grade if there is. I'll leave the selection to you. Oh my, I didn't mean it that way. Oishi laughed loudly, not wholly unsatisfied, and stopped at the hostess to tell her that the cheap booze was fine. I know as much as was written in those magazines, but I don't know anything about the curse that happened the year of the disaster. Because the entire area around Hinamizoa was sealed off, you see? There wasn't much of an investigation that could be done on the last year of the curse. Even if after several years the quarantine is lifted, the villagers are mostly dead, and what few survivors there mostly went to stay with relatives, their whereabouts mostly unknown. It's a complete dead end. Oishi seemed to postulate to himself as he stared at the ceiling, as if trying to work out a memory from the rusty cogs in his head. And then he said in a completely sober voice, the magazines made it seem like the curse of the 5th year was that disaster. But the actual curse really happened on the day of the Watanagashi festival. A photographer by the name of Jiro Tomitake. He was the victim. Oishi gestured about how the victim tore out his own throat with his fingernails as he talked. And the burnt corpse of the woman Tomitake was in a relationship with was found in the mountains in Gifu. The Gifu prefectural police weren't very cooperative, so I don't know much about it. There were 2 victims in one night? Actually, see, it wasn't just those 2. You see, the next day, Kumagai-kun, one of my subordinates, disappeared along with his car in the middle of his investigation. Kumagai was a younger detective that was going to be partnered with Oishi after we first met. He was going around the village to question people about the incident with Tomitake. He might have gotten caught up in something. If he was with me, he might have been safe. Even now it still stings. That day, for some reason, I did a real number on my stomach. I had to pass on going around outside. He got too close to the truth. Was made to disappear? That's what I think. Kuma-chan was young and had a promising future ahead of him, but he still didn't have enough experience on the scene. He wasn't used to dealing with any complications. Oishi lamented the fact that he wasn't with his subordinate that day. And then the next day, see? You know him as well, Akasaku-san. You know, Dr. Irie. You remember him? That young doctor from the hospital? I vaguely remember. For whatever reason, he committed suicide with sleeping pills. No suicide note or anything. The autopsy confirmed that it was the sleeping pills. Nothing was in doubt except for the motive. It isn't that hard to make it look like somebody died from taking sleeping pills, is it? Any possibility it was a murder? He was single, no prior marriages. It didn't seem like he was going out with anybody in particular. He was the coach of the local junior baseball team. He was on good terms with the villagers. He was liked by everybody. I couldn't find anybody who would want to do him harm, except for a high schooler. Middle schooler. Well, any chances to investigate were ruined by the disaster, though. There's no way to find out anything about him now. After that... Then, what about Rikafurude's death? It was the day of. Around noon, some of the old folks who were visiting the shrine discovered the corpse of Rikafurude. Murder? Before we continue, you should probably stop eating that squid salmon. That bad? Oishi nodded firmly. The corpse was found on the shrine grounds, next to the donation box. Although she was probably killed somewhere else. That's because while she was completely naked, there wasn't any dirt on the soles of her feet. Any sign it was some sort of sexual assault? According to the autopsy, there wasn't any indication of that. What we know is that she was rendered unconscious by some sort of drug, carried to that place, then had her abdomen sliced wide open. Her organs were deliberately removed and scattered about. Unconscious? Then she wasn't cut open after her death? That's horrible. That girl's prediction was right on the mark. Pretty sure she was more detailed about the other deaths that led up to her own. For example, I think she said that the housewife that was beaten to death on the 4th year had her head split open. Then, in that case, did she know that her own death would be so terrible? There must have been some moments where she wanted to doubt the validity of her own predictions. But as people died exactly as prophesied, as the years passed, that prophecy would only come closer to fruition. Then, facing the final year, unable to struggle against her own destiny, her all-too-young life was snuffed out. And in such a cruel way. Knowing that her days were numbered, and unable to fight the tide of events heralding her end, my heart ached at her helplessness. About the way she died, it seems like it wasn't just somebody's sick tastes. What I'm saying is, I told you before about Hinamizawa used to be home to demons, didn't I? Yeah, I think I remember. The festival in Hinamizawa village, Watanagashi, the cotton drift, seems to stem from the drifting of entrails. It seems that it came from the man-eating demons ripping apart their victims and throwing their organs in the river. In other words, in Hinamizawa, pulling out entrails had some sort of religious meaning? Well, this is according to the old tales in Hinamizawa, you see. To act as an arbitrator so that the humans and the man-eating demons could live together peacefully, a god known as Oyashiro-sama descended from the heavens. If I recall, Rikafurude was said to be the living incarnation of that Oyashiro-sama, wasn't she? Yeah. So, cutting open Rikafurude, who was a living god, would be to the village nothing less than absolute sacrilege. Absolute sacrilege. In other words, you mean sacrilege towards Oyashiro-sama? The rest you should know, Akasaku-san. The wrath of Oyashiro-sama would occur that same night. The great Hinamizawa disaster. The official explanation was that some swamp upstream erupted with toxic volcanic gas, which enveloped the village. The swamp where it erupted was called Onigafuchi Swamp. It was the origin of Hinamizawa's old name, Onigafuchi Village. According to village lore, the depths of the swamp apparently led to hell, where the man-eating demons came from. That almost seems too perfect. Oh, no, 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 no. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There was another bit of folklore in the village. If Oyashiro-sama became angry, the cauldron of hell would open up and miasma would flow out, or so they say. To the villagers, hell was at the bottom of the swamp, so basically the miasma poured out, smothering the village. Yeah, basically, due to the sacrilegious way that Rikufurude, the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, was killed, the village incurred the wrath of Oyashiro-sama in the form of that disaster. That seems to be their explanation. So what you're saying is that the disaster wasn't a natural one? Well, everything does seem to fit together a little too well. If Oyashiro-sama's curse doesn't really exist, and everything really was just a matter of coincidence, I would doubt it. A wry smile formed on Oishi's face as he listened to my absurd take on things. He wore an expression as though, even if it were absurd, there was time he had thought the same thing as well. In regards to the religious beliefs of the villagers, suppose there was a more fanatical following among them. That group created a situation that would incur Oyashiro-sama's wrath, and enacted the disaster to make it seem like the truth. Of course, I won't laugh. I've wandered down that line of reasoning more than once myself. However, even though Hinamizawa is a small village, it still has a population of over 1,000 people. To murder that many people in a single night doesn't seem realistic, no matter how you think about it. The gas eruption was believed to have happened around 2 a.m., several hours before dawn. In that short amount of time, going around killing all the villagers in a way that made it look like poison gas didn't seem feasible at all. The swamp the gas erupted from still had some religious significance, didn't it? If that's the case, then maybe there was something set up in the swamp, something that could be activated whenever a divine verdict was rendered. According to the JSDF press release, the swamp was declared the source of the eruption. This was after everything was thoroughly looked over by their investigative team. If anything like that was set up, I think they would have found it. It wouldn't necessarily have to be in the swamp itself. Come on, haven't you ever heard about it? The old story about how when a faraway spring dried up, the village spring dried up as well? What do you mean by that? Many waterways are connected by underground aquifers. Swamps and springs are the only parts that manage to pop above the surface. No. So what you're saying is that Onigafuchi Swamp is connected to another swamp or spring, and there's something the villagers rigged up there long ago, something that changes the pressure of Onigafuchi Swamp, causing it to erupt with poison gas? Is that what you're getting at? Oishi laughed heartily, commending the fact that the youngins have a nice, flexible way of thinking. That was the former detective in him. Even though it was a hypothesis that he didn't come up with, he still had the presence of mind to not dismiss it right away. That's an interesting theory. If that proves to be true, then it would be, unprecedentedly, the largest mass murder in the history of Japan. Once the quarantine on Hinamizawa village is lifted, I think it should definitely be investigated. Oishi-san, do you still have any connections with the prefectural police? Somewhat. I'm an honorary advisor for their judo classes, so even now I pop by during summer training camps and such. I don't know when the quarantine on Hinamizawa village will be lifted, but please let me help investigate. Got it. Oishi-san, how do you feel about the string of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa they call the curse of Oyashiro-sama? At the time, the villagers were putting a lot of pressure on the station. The official stance on things was that the cases were unrelated, that each case was separate, each with its own resolution. That couldn't be, even though it was blatantly obvious that the cases were connected based on the village's religious beliefs. Akasaka-san, we can only say that now because of the rather grandiose way things ended after 5 years. At the time, those coincidental incidents just happened to coincidentally occur on the day of Watanagashi. Just a, it would be nice if nothing happened this year kind of feel to it. Coincidence? The girl predicted everything from the beginning. Girl. Rika Furude. That child warned me about all the incidents that would happen afterwards. Akasaka-san. Is that true? Yes. The girl said as much. That the next year the damn foreman would be killed, and his corpse dismembered. Not only that, she warned me of all the events that would transpire in the following years. Akasaka-san, when she told you all of that, what year was it? When I met the girl, I was investigating the kidnapping incident. So June of 1978. The year before the dismemberment murder. Wrinkles formed between Oishi's eyebrows as he closed his eyes and began to digest what I had just told him. Akasaka-san, if you're wrong about Rika Furude knowing the future through some divine medium, this is getting ridiculous. Yep. If you're just trying to shock me, I'm going to be really angry, you know? I'm speaking the truth. Then the script behind the chain of mysterious deaths was written a year before it even started. And, just as predicted, Rika Furude was killed. At first, I thought she meant that she would be killed in the disaster. However, now I know that her death wasn't due to that, but rather an atrocious one at the hands of a murderer. She said she would be killed. At that point in time, she knew more or less how her own death would occur. Then, why didn't Rika Furude not try to run away? Even if her death was already spelled out for her, knowing that, she still had a grace period of several years, didn't she? She had plenty of time to try and run away, or consult the police. Why did she just accept her death with no resistance? I don't know. Even though Rika Furude was doted upon by the older folks in the village, you see? After she lost her parents, she had no living relatives, and lived a fairly solitary life other than hanging around with some close friends. It might have been she didn't have any power to fight or anybody to rely on. She must have tried signaling somebody for help in regards to her own death, though. You know very well that the village and the police weren't very amicable with one another, Akasaka-san. At the very least, I never heard anything about Rika Furude seeking protection from anybody. Or, it could be that she simply resigned herself to being a religious sacrifice. It could have been something like that. There's no way that was the case. I spoke decisively. At that time, she said it. She had definitely said that she wanted to live happily, that she wanted to spend her time surrounded by her dear friends. She hadn't given up on life. She had hoped to keep on living. Ah. At that moment, I became dumbstruck. What's the matter? Akasaka-san? No, it's nothing. I fell into silence. Oishi folded his arms and began murmuring in contemplation again. Eventually, he stood up and headed towards the hallway to find the hostess, yelling that he wanted a pen and paper. When Oishi, noisy even though he was just thinking, left, the room immediately fell into a chilled silence. I stood up. It was then I realized I was drunk enough to be unsteady on my feet. When I slid open the window, a beautiful yet somehow ephemeral moon drifted across the night sky. It was just now that I realized she hadn't accepted her own death. She wanted to keep living, happily and joyously. She had said that quite clearly to me, but I was a fool. I hadn't been asked explicitly, so I hadn't realized it. She had made it clear as day that she didn't want to die. Wasn't that her cry for help? She didn't say as much that she wanted help. But even given that, it wasn't as though she wasn't looking for salvation. Without any family, and unable to trust the police, she instead told somebody without any relation to the village, somebody from a faraway place, me, help. She had gone around and cut the phone cords. If I had made that phone call and learned of Ike's death, I probably would have fallen into despair. If I was in that state, even if she was looking for help, her cries would have fallen on deaf ears. That's why. Knowing everything, she had cut the phone cords. She wanted even a little time to seek help from me. Oishi, just before now, had lamented that one of the younger officers got mixed up in the case, having been erased because he wasn't there. I was feeling the same way. If only I was there in June of 1983, I could have protected her. In 1983, it would have been 5 years since the kidnapping took place. While raising the only daughter Yukie had left me, putting all my youth and passion into my work, honing my wits and courage, wrestling with difficult cases. Nothing like my failings during the kidnapping incident would have occurred. I wouldn't have been slow to react in a one-on-one fight. And by that point, I jumped into that foreign mafia-run gambling parlors where I'd learned to deal with automatic weapons, let alone handguns. I had grown so much that in 1983, I couldn't have been even compared to how I was in 1978. That's why, if I was by her side, I should have been able to save her life. No matter what conspiracy or foul plots drew near, I definitely would have protected her. She, even though sounding resigned, should have still been able to ask me for help. I just didn't realize it. I couldn't realize it. Just as I wouldn't have realized it if I was told of Yuki's accident. I wasn't able to realize it. I wanted to cry. If I had taken her words to heart, I would have prevented Yuki's accident. And I would have been able to protect the girl to whom I owed a debt from even a predetermined death. She must have been expecting that from me. I learned about the disaster while watching television in my house. Until I learned about that, I had forgotten about Higurashi. In order to recover from the shock of Yuki's death, I had tried to remove everything about the place from my memory. What an ungrateful fool I was. Even though in exchange for saving her, the girl had told me of a way to save Yuki, I was unable to accept her gratitude. Now here we were. She hadn't died in her sleep due to a natural disaster. She was split open while still alive, killed while suffering the disgrace of having her organs torn out. She must have known beforehand that on that day, on that year, she would be killed in such a terrifying way. But even knowing what end awaited her, she was all too weak. A lone girl without anybody to rely upon, unable to seek help, had to swallow her own predetermined death, and left this mortal coil. She said she wanted to live. She said she just wanted to live happily. That's all she wanted. She didn't ask for anything extravagant. For any person that was ever born, it was the very basis of desires. She never said a peep about wanting money or that she wished she was in somebody else's situation. She had said it, that if all deaths were preordained, then hers was probably also all according to plan. She might have been a lone, frail girl, but I don't think she would have accepted it without at least putting up a fight. There must have been, in some small way, some form of resistance that she mustered. And with what she could muster, seeking my help was part of that. God damn it! I howled. I stomped the floor. Why did I become a police officer in the first place? How could I call myself an officer if I couldn't save a single girl from the misfortune that was awaiting her? Now that's a line that's like very huge. It's like, you couldn't save a single girl. You didn't save a specific single girl. Because if you can't save that girl, then you also couldn't save every other girl that happened to die in existence. And that's what superheroes are like, judged. If you didn't save every single person possible, you aren't a superhero. Was it because there was so much going on at that time I couldn't process the fact that she was asking for help? Yeah, that's right. I was still green. If I was in that situation now, I would have definitely been able to help her. But it was already all over. Even if I wanted to settle the regrets she left behind, Hinamizawa as a dangerous area was still quarantined. Most of the people involved were already dead, with the few that did remain spread around the country, unable to be traced. The stage of that tragedy was still off limits as well. The police investigation was put on hold, the case slowly being buried in the sands of time. Just like how I wouldn't have known unless Oishi had asked me about it. Akusaka-san, are you okay? At some point, Oishi had returned with a notebook in hand. Until I saw the expression on Oishi's face, I didn't realize I was in tears. I never realized she wanted help. Akusaka-san, calm down. But it's all too late now. She was killed! In such an atrocious manner. She was counting on me, but I couldn't save her. I couldn't save her! I might also be at fault for not building up an amicable relationship with the village. If Rika Furude had told me about it, I might have been able to extend a helping hand. I wasn't able to build up enough trust for that. That's something I regret. When Oishi said the word trust, it weighed on me even more. Yes, she had given me her trust. She trusted me, meaning that she thought that I would have been able to ward off the fate of her foreseen death. She believed in that. I cried. I fell to my hands and knees as I began to bawl. Eventually, Oishi spoke quietly. Akasaka-san, does it upset you? It does. Then, there's only one way worth mentioning for Rika Furude to have her revenge. Is there really? Is there a way to do that? Oishi showed me the pen and notebook. In order to properly mourn the death of Rika Furude, we have to at least find out the truth. Truth. The truth will set us free. Yes, not just Rika Furude. Lots of people died. Their lament must be immeasurable. But their deaths were left unsettled because of the disaster. Now we can't even investigate them, as their memory fades into oblivion. Many people died. The old man was killed. Kuma-chan was erased. Everybody was a victim. But the police can't even investigate it. Who's going to take care of their parting regrets? Only we can. Akasaka-san. We find the truth. Yeah, we'll find it. I've been around every one of the strings of mysterious deaths, know of all of the inner workings of the village. You were told an important truth the year before they happened by Rika Furude. We can do it. But they're already dead. Oh, that's right. Rika Furude died. You were too inexperienced, so you couldn't save her. Ah! Oishi grabbed me, who was a wreck, and lifted me firmly by the lapels. That's why. To atone for that, we revealed the truth. If what you say is true, then all the incidents were part of some greater design. If that's the case, then how we investigate needs to change completely. I intend to spend tonight summarizing all the information you and I have, and then get in contact with one of my former subordinates first thing in the morning. We're not going to let the case go cold. We're definitely going to crack it wide open. Crack it open. Crack it open. We will. Several years have passed, but it's not beyond the statute of limitations. Even if the case has been postponed, it's not closed. It's still going. We're going to keep it going. Oishi and I vowed to bring the truth of the case to light and stood up. Everything ended in 1985. I, at least, wanted to apologize, had searched for her grave. After the state autopsy, her remains were entrusted to one of the shrine's followers. In the future, when the quarantine on the Hinamizawa village was lifted, they would be returned to her family grave. However, unsure who exactly took the remains of Rika Furude, till today I couldn't even apologize to her. In the future, when the quarantine on Hinamizawa is lifted, all I could do then was wait until whoever that person is returned to the grave. What I could do right now was not apologize to her. Instead, until I was able to meet her again, I would reveal the truth and dispel her regrets. Even now, sporadic eruptions of gas in the Hinamizawa area meant that the prospect of the quarantine being lifted wasn't happening anytime soon. Most likely, it seemed that she had no intention of meeting me again until I found the truth. That's why the quarantine wouldn't be lifted, or so I thought. Until the day I grasped the truth. It was the following year. Oishi and I co-authored a book on the string of mysterious deaths leading up to the great Hinamizawa disaster. I decided on the title, Higurashi, When They Cry. That was because for those few days I was in Hinamizawa, the sound that I remembered the most was the cry of the Higurashi. I could only wish that based on this book, those people involved with the incident could refresh their memories and bring to light a new truth. And more importantly, that nothing like this ever happens again. I wrote this in the afterword. Why did this tragedy happen? We can't reach the truth by ourselves. If you're reading this, please discover the truth. That is our only wish. Kurado Oishi, Mamoru Akasaka. This year, the quarantine on the Hinamizawa still hasn't been lifted. Oh, that's the end already. cast review session at the Angel Mort. Let's go do that. There, I'll skip past a bit of cheering. Thank you very much for playing. I was the star of this scenario. Nice jazzy theme music, they sure did. Anyways, hasn't there been too much of you lately, Oishi? She meant that literally. It's rather impudent of you to try and hog the spotlight here, even though you already had all that screen time. Well, yeah, most of these girls didn't show up at all. Besides, Rika-chan was the main heroine. Everyone else didn't really have any appearances, did they? I heard that this time the scenario was a bit of a side story, but I didn't think that they would leave out the main cast this much. You didn't have it so bad, Mion-san. At least you had a few appearances, did you not? Both Rana-san and I didn't even have a cameo. Rana still shows up on the covers a lot, so she's still okay. Exactly what are you trying to say then? That I was the only outcast with no appearance, is that it? They only treated me horribly. How sad, how sad. They'll probably just keep treating you worse and worse until you finally drop down to a supporting role. That's just too much. That's not true. There's lots of people who like Satsuko-chan. They won't treat you that horribly, okay? I don't like being treated like this. I think he'll probably have a lot of appearances next time. So cheer up, okay? But I'd heard that this scenario was supposed to be somewhat of a bonus story. But is it really? I think that things kind of got complicated. The story was difficult for me to understand. Yeah. What I found the hardest to believe was that the year before the string of mysterious deaths, Rika-chan already knew about them. Which means all the incidents were part of someone's scenario. That's a pretty important piece of information. It's probably because I'm a shrine maiden, so I know the future from Higurashi-sama's divine revelations. For somebody like me who believes in the theory that it was the work of human culprits, I'd like to deny that. I believe in the curse, so that Rika-chan, who's the living incarnation of the deity that protects Inumizawa, Higurashi-sama could have that divine power as a possibility, I think. Nope. Someone who thinks it was the work of man, that kind of unfounded fantasy will not stand. All the incidents were caused by people. There's no curse or magic or aimbots or cheat codes. It would be wonderful if I could use magic, though. If it's Rika-chan, I could go along with that. Oh. Rika-chan, Magical Girl spin-off. Well, for the people who believe it was the work of humans, the ending was a big revelation. From the first incident until Rika-chan was killed in the Great Disaster, everything was scripted. Knowing that it's all one big incident vastly increases the amount of material you can hypothesize with. I think that the prophecy is proof in itself that Rika-chan has some divine power. In other words, it's proof that there's some mysterious power at work in Hinamizawa. I think it's proof that the incidents weren't the work of humans alone. And on this topic, it's well, you gotta remember that somehow the world's gone on 3 times. Keiichi's died in what? 2 of them? And the world ended in the 3rd one. And same with the 4th one. And the 3rd one, what was it? Well, the 4th one, I should say. Rika doesn't specify how she dies, but she did die the same in the 3rd. But the main thing is, in the 3rd, Oishi went missing. In the 4th, it was his assistant that went missing. Alright, more importantly, that expression that Rika-chan was wearing this time, that was super scary, wasn't it? Me. Yeah, I was surprised too. I never thought that cute little Riki-chan would laugh like that. Hey, just for a little bit, could you show us that face one more time? I don't want to. I don't want her to do that outside of the story. Oh, what? What is this? A blackout? Nobody move. Any weird movements and you'll come face to face with a combo trap that takes you from a pendulum to a landmine to an electric chair with a buzzsaw. Satsuko, what's the meaning of this? Oh, ho, 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 ho. We'll now be starting the after party for everybody who didn't have an appearance this time. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Hello again, everybody. I didn't think that I'd have an appearance here of all places. I'm delighted, though. Hello, everybody. Oh my, didn't I warn you not to move? Ryugu-san, are you okay? Hojo-san, you didn't have to go this far. Oh, ho, ho, ho. The grudge of somebody not making an appearance is a terrible thing. Satsuko had lots of appearances in the main scenario. The grudge of somebody not making an appearance. Damn it, when was she able to set this many traps? Maybe that when this place was selected as the venue for that after party. At that point, my traps were already set? Oh, ho, ho, ho. Oh, I know. There's somebody behind you pulling the strings. There is, isn't there? Come out. Hello, hello, my sister. How are you doing? Oh, it's Shion-chan. Hello. Yeah. I feel sorry for her for falling for the same trap twice. I thought it was you, Shion. Even though you're penciled in to be the main character in the next scenario, this is an outrage. Now you've gone and done it. Even if it is only the bonus scene before the answer arcs. I can't let my sister have all the appearances. I'm not that generous, you know. Well, in any case, I just let Satsuko start a little something something. Shion, what is it that you want? Let's just say I'm securing myself a little safety buffer. The other day, for some reason, you were steadily getting more votes in the popularity poll. Ah, something nobody in the current time would get. Yep. In the first half of the Watanagashi chapter, there were lots of people getting infatuated with Michan. Well, in the latter half, I wonder what happened to Shion. Oh, never mind, I guess. That's why. I thought I'd take the time now to crush you and Satsuko, who have been getting too many votes for my comfort. So I came up with this elaborate plan. Shion-san, what did you say just now? You're going to crush me as well? Betrayal. You're a little too slow to notice, aren't you, Shorty? Here you go. What? Goodbye, all you regulars. Hello to all you irregular folk. All the main characters are done for. Shion-chan, you don't have to go that far, probably. Now, Jiro-san. It's interesting, so just let it be. The number of appearances for the both of us is going to go up, you know. Jiro-san. Do you not like being by my side? That's not true. Chie-sensei, did Shi-chan pay you off too? I'm sorry, Ryugu-san. Shion-san said she would make me a new segment called Teach Me, Chie-sensei, starting from the next scenario, so I just... Well then, who should I dispose of next in a most embarrassing manner? Maybe Satsuko, since she helped me set this all up? I won't allow that. Yeah. Ouch. He seems somehow reliable for once. Alright, Kyosuke Hirie. She'll not allow any aggression against Satsuko-chan. I may also just be a supporting character, but don't think you can persuade me so easily. Oh. And you're saying you want to withdraw from being the lead in live performance, Sato's maid training dress-up chapter that was planned on filming after this? Shion-sama, I, Kyosuke, shall follow you to the depths of hell. That was fast. Hold on. With this, I'm holding all the cards, even in this after-party scene too. I'll have everything proceed as I see fit. Huh? We're missing somebody. Shion-sama, Renaissance isn't here. She escaped at some point. There she is. Ryugu-san, didn't I just tell you you shouldn't move? Renaissance, I won't do anything to hurt you, but it's easier if you don't resist. Sorry, but all this is really bizarre. It's Betty Toast. What are you trying to do? Light switches? I see, you're planning to do something when the room's pitch black, aren't you? Resistance is futile. Renaissance, you should stop your pointless resistance and just come along peacefully. If you make me angry enough, then not only will you suffer, but so will my dear sister as well. You can't do anything just by turning off the lights. Rena, I'm sorry, but do what they say. It's alright, don't worry. By turning off the lights, we can reverse this situation. Reverse the situation? Exactly what are you scheming? Rena-san, you're pretty good at making me laugh. Now why don't you go ahead and try? Show me how you're going to turn this around. You're spoiled, Shi-chan. Even if you didn't have any appearances in the main scenario, you've had so much screen time during this after-party. You're spoiled. When exactly are you saying I was spoiled? You don't understand, Shi-chan. Even if it's just this after-party, you still have an appearance. You also appeared a lot in the previous scenarios. There's somebody who resents you from the depths of hell, who can't forgive you. Listen, can't you hear it, Shi-chan? That's right. I understand now. I get it. Kei-chan. That's right, he never has any appearances during the after-parties. There's no way Kei-chan will allow someone to monopolize the after-parties all to themselves without him. I see. So, how is Kei-chan going to appear here, when he doesn't even have any character art? It couldn't possibly be that they'd insert new character art just for this. That's just your self-centered way of thinking, Shi-chan. Yeah, no! If the lights are turned off... Chie-sensei, hold Ren-chan back. Huh? Huh? It's too late. Are they finally gonna show him? Save me, Keiichi-kun! That voice is Kei-chan. Rena, you have my thanks. When even the moon abandons the land and shrouds it in true darkness, the demon lord of the darkest black, Keiichi Maibara, shall appear. I see, if it's like this, he can appear even if he doesn't have any character art. There's no character or background art, so it's really easy on the production staff. Wah! Shion! You act like you're the main character in a tragedy, but from my point of view, it's more like a comedy. It seems like you've gotten a little carried away. Every after-party, without any character art, without any sort of appreciation, witness my anger, my grudge, and all of my sorrow. I shall install it all upon you. It almost seems like Keiichi-kun is doing some sort of bad guy transformation secret. This isn't some sort of transformation, I'll have you. No, I've always been a demon lord. As of right now, this world which is enveloped within true darkness shall dance upon the palm of my hand. Within this world of darkness, there are none who can oppose me. Keiichi-kun is kind of scary. Oh. Scary. Ha 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 ha! The age of the frightening Higurashi has come to an end. From here on out begins the dawn of a perverted and cutesy Higurashi. What do you say? Maibara-san, bring me with you! Ha ha ha! You know it, coach. Then as a first step, I'll show our doctor come coach my power. What is this? Hakuno-san's in a mini-skirt nurse outfit, and it's not some pink one like you'd find in a porno. He knows what he's doing. It's a proper pure and innocent white. Even though she's a nurse, she doesn't appear in the outfit once during the main scenario. You've got to be kidding me. Well then, on to the next target. Rena! This hasn't changed the situation at all. It's just turned into a different type of crisis. How? Can't do anything in this darkness. Now then, who shall I make wear what next? Maybe a nice school uniform, gym clothes, school swimsuit triple combo? My Sama, you're the best. How about Bunny Girl or Campaign Girl? Oh, no. Lingerie could be good too. No, wait. How about just about making everybody naked? Well, of course, leave the socks on. Whoa, that's a good idea. You know your stuff. Coach, I feel like we're finally seeing eye to eye here. Wait, my San. No. Hey, call me Ill from now on. Call me Dr. Ill. Yay! You can't forget about us. Tommy and Corrado are already on your side, Kay. Tommy, Corrado, we're all finally here. The Elite Four have arrived. Finally. With Kay at their head, the evil Elite Four made their grand entrance. With the complete darkness, the Demon Lord of the Darkest Black, Keiichi Maibara, was finally able to reach the surface world. His magical power was without equal. In this darkness, nobody could stand against him. All must bow. Ah, will the heroines be unable to escape this darkness, and be forced to submit to the will of the Demon Lord, forced to wear embarrassing outfit after embarrassing outfit, being used as life-size dress-up dolls for all eternity? That's great. More! More! By the way, the school swimsuits are the classic type, right? I won't forgive you if they're the competitive swimming style. Damn it. Shion. Thanks to you, I ended up like this, so do something about it. It's alright, sis. Kei-chan isn't the only one who can unleash their true power amid the darkness. Huh? Did we have such a convenient ally? You're rather impertinent, Shion Sonozaki. Also, if you were expecting help from the principal, that's too bad. This is the ultimate desire of young men. If you call yourself a man, do your best, as written on this nice little authorization slip here. Of course, you won't be able to rely on the newcomer Asakusan either. He's been on a private couple's hot spring vacation his wife's family set up for them since yesterday. In other words, all the bases are covered. You're so naive, Kei-chan. Even characters who have art are able to reveal their true form in the darkness. Chie-sensei. That's how it is, my Barakun. It's dark, so I can't really tell, but it seems like Chie-sensei's outfit is different. What are those? All those swords in her hands. They couldn't be. Go back. Huh? Any more than that is a secret. The black crosses from Fate's Day Night. My Barakun, that was just a little too much mischief on your part. The church can't overlook the church. Oh, wait a minute. This here. There's no way, right? That's cheating. It's against the rules. Hey, she can't do this, right? Oi. You can't use that big one. Huh? Her arc drive has started invincibility? The 7 oh! Oh! It's more a Melty Blood reference from, was it Tsugihime, probably. Alright, are we ending it finally? I feel like that went on a bit too long. Just a tiny bit. Nice twist, though. Just a moment. Gotta move my cat. Oh. Thank you very much. Alright, moving on. Right, no routes to take. Just like watching it like a book or a movie, it isn't really a game. Lots of mysteries referenced during the experience. Challenge shows is worth blah blah blah. Next chapter starts the answer arcs. Higurashi, opening eyes. Answers are a sad thing based on what is revealed, all the possibilities that you were allowed to imagine until now, but suddenly become refined down to a few. Based on that, before the answer arcs is probably where people can enjoy this work the most. If by chance, while you're reading this, you already have the Higurashi chapter at hand, please enjoy hypothesizing and fantasizing the fullest before you start. That's where the real charm of the series takes place. Sorry for saying something so impudent. There's nothing better than for you to enjoy it. Well then, have a long and pleasant night. We're waiting for you all in Hinamizawa. If you come and play with Rena, I'd love to go treasure hunting together. Oh. And that's it for this week. There he goes again. Right. Huh. Music's still playing. That's odd. Oh well. Anyway, we're going to end here, and we'll start Chapter 5 on Saturday. Y'all have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye. Oh, actually, I forgot to say. I'm going to start up Death Road to Canada on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. That's the next. Bye-bye.